In this segment, I want to share some ideas about workload because I notice when I go into companies that most people are just totally feeling overloaded these days. Basically, what happens is the global competition creates a situation where organizations feel the need to stretch resources, and they stretch and they stretch and they stretch, and quite often what happens is they go beyond the elastic limit and the rubber band either breaks or completely deforms. And people feel abused that they're just so overloaded with work that they can't get it all done. And so I've noticed a kind of pattern that seems to recur in this. First of all, you'll hear the employees saying, "We are just totally buried." And then later on, when you begin to talk about what's going on in the different groups and the different people, people will start to talk about, well, these people aren't really pulling their weight. These people are goofing off a lot of the time. Or this person never does anything, just sits around and does her nails or talks on the phone all the time. And when they start to gripe about each other, you begin to realize that on average, what is happening is we're not getting anywhere near 100% of the effort that people have in them to give. Instead, we're getting a tiny fraction. Really, my guess, and this is going to sound harsh, but it's really an observation that I make, is that most organizations are getting somewhere around 30% of what is the capability of the workers that they have. Now, don't get me wrong, I have seen situations where people are really scrambling and running and really totally overloaded. That does happen. But an awful lot of the time, it's a mental process that says that we're working so hard and we're overloaded, and yet there's no room. We're already stretched to the max, so don't even think about trying to get any more productivity in this organization. And I've seen situations where you can take a situation like that and end up with an amazing amount of productivity improvement. Let me tell you a story about a real situation that happened in a small department. It was actually a section of a department that was reporting to a manager that worked for me. His name was John. And John had done some benchmarking with this unit versus other units in his own organization and concluded that they really weren't competitive in terms of a cost basis. So he decided that what he was going to do was shut down that particular cell or operation in that building and basically move it and consolidate it with another organization, sort of like a merger, if you will, and to try to get more productivity. And he came in one day and announced to the whole department, it was only 19 people, it was a very small cell. He called all 19 people together and said, "Look, we just have to get more cost efficient around here, and what I think we should do is combine you with this other group over here, and we'll be able to get a lot more efficient." Now these people had been really cranking and torquing and basically saying, we're about maxed out with what we can do here. Well, they didn't like the idea at all of shutting down their area and moving to someplace else. That was definitely not for them. So John made a little deal with him. He said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I don't want to presuppose what we can do here. I'll let you see what you can figure out to do. First of all, I'll provide you with a very good facilitator that can help you work through a process here. And we'll give you a couple of weeks and see what you can come up with to see if you can, do better on productivity without having to move." Now, that was just the trick. First of all, he did have a very excellent facilitator that kept the people from fighting with each other, and they really took a zero-base approach to what they could be doing versus what they had been doing. And it turns out, I remember very vividly, they called John and myself in at an odd hour, 6 o'clock in the morning, because that was a shift change situation. They called us in and they proceeded to outline for us a plan that would, within a few months, take their department size from 19 people down to 9 people. At the same time, improve the quality and improve the customer delivery. It was like you just couldn't believe that these people were up there talking about being able to do that, and yet they had invented the way to do it. They had to eliminate a shift. They had to take some supervisory positions and basically eliminate them. They all had to get cross-trained on each other's jobs, and a lot of things had to change. But they were game to do it, and they were standing up there at 6 o'clock in the morning, I can remember it very vividly, saying, "We would like your permission to do this." And they looked at me to give approval, and I said, well, I tell you, I feel like I just caught the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, in the management Super Bowl. This is amazing. So we gave him the rope to go ahead and do the improvement. And they were true to their word. Now, they did not get down to 9 people from 19, but they did get down to 11. So going from 19 people down to 11, improving the quality, improving the customer delivery was possible. And not only that, but afterwards they weren't complaining about being so overworked. Because what they did is they invented the change. And since they owned the change, they made it work. A couple other things were needed to make it work. John promised them at the beginning of the exercise that if there were any people that were freed up as a result of the exercise, he would find them really good equivalent jobs elsewhere in the organization. He had to do that because if it was like, if I'm going to invent a process that eliminates my job and I'm no longer employed, that would have been a very different result. But just to show that, I would tell you that story because it shows that even though people feel like they're stretched to the max, there's usually quite a bit more that can be obtained if you do a good job of working on the culture.